welcome Suzanne Benton.
Okay, there I am. I want you to know that this picture was taken by Jesus. Brooklyn Jesus. I did not say I was important because I grew up in New York City. When you grow up in New York City, you feel anonymous no matter what you do. And maybe that's a great help because if you're anonymous, you can step out. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. The energy here is just so inspiring. I mean, you give me such faith for the future. You're really wonderful. And of course, now we have the younger people, the high school kids, who are giving us faith for the future. I hope you're all coming tomorrow in Poynter Park. Okay, there's lots of kinds of courage. I mean, it just goes on and on. I keep thinking of another kind of courage. Today, when they had the courage word there, you saw that little heart. Well, that's courage, too. You know, to commit yourself. There's the courage that you're thrust into. There's the courage that's supportive, instinctive, carefully considered. There's the courage of conviction. There's the courage in which you are impelled. We all have a lot of courage. We start out with huge courage because we're born. You know, that first house that held us got too small, so we had to get out. And that's our mandate from then on. Growing, learning, being curious, getting that air, getting that light, having that hunger. Hunger helps courage too. You got to be fed. Okay, so I'm going to tell you there are several things that have sort of pushed me along to become a person of courage. And I suppose the first one was my mother, who I'm beginning to think must have had some psychic abilities because I was born with straight hair and she wanted it to be curly. I obeyed. So when I was 3 years old, we lived across the street from Prospect Park in New York City. My mother decided to teach me how to cross the road. It was 4 lanes with a trolley car. Look left and right. She didn't tell me to do it twice. She just told me to do it once, so I was really lucky. I could go to the park by myself. And I did. I could just say, going to the park. 3 years old. Too small to get on the swing. She would be arrested today. But I'm really grateful that she wasn't, because she told me I could do it. I have to tell you, years later, I went with a filmmaker and my daughter, and when I crossed that street, I felt a thrill. So that was a thrill from when I was 3 years old. So I'm going to push here now. I want you to know that yesterday I was younger than I am today. So for all of my 82 years, I have been mostly young. So here I am at 21, and I want you to know that I was a redhead. Okay, lots of things had happened to me by the time I was 21. At this point, I was married. I was an art teacher. I'm the first person in my family, female, to get a college degree in art and education. Thank you. Yeah, this is not a character who was raised, you know, with a silver spoon. In any case, I became an art teacher of inner city Brooklyn kids. Bedford-Stuyvesant kids. Now, Bedford-Stuyvesant, you can buy something for, you know, $1 million, but when I was a teacher, it wasn't $1 million. It was a tough neighborhood, and those kids were tough. So my first class, Monday morning, first thing just the weekend was agony for me because I had to face these kids. Now, you heard the buzz here this morning? Well, that's the way they were all the time. It was hard I was only 20. Ooh, I thought I was smart because I graduated from college. They were never quiet. It was such a challenge. And a lot of them couldn't read. Can you imagine? They get into the 8th grade and they still couldn't read. That was a shock. One day they walked in just as quiet as you are. I looked around. It felt static. I couldn't believe it, how quiet they were. Well, some of them sat down, but 2 boys didn't. They picked up chairs and started a fight. I had been a tomboy. I didn't think. This was instinctive. I just ran in the middle to stop the fight. And they threw me to the ground. I don't know if they threw me or just the impact or whatever, but there I was on the wooden floor of my glass room. I don't know what kids do today because I hear they're not as respectful. Not that those kids were, but they did get very quiet, very quiet. I got up and I said to the boys, I'm not going to send you to the principal, but you have to get me new stockings because these ripped. And I went and taught the class. I never had any trouble with those kids again. So whatever that fall to the ground was well worth it. And sometimes we do have to make sacrifices to reveal our courage. Okay, now, whatever, you could see that when I was a teacher, even though those kids were impossible, I did have courage. And I came to love those kids. And in many ways, they made me fearless. So that was a good start, you know, to get out into young adulthood. So I was a young married woman, you know, when I went to, in the 50s, you see, you got married early. I mean, people told me if you get out of college and you're not married, you're never going to find anybody. Even Elizabeth Warren married young, but she, of course, was converted just as I was. Anyway, okay, the true test of my courage as a young woman, when I'm showing you examples of my art, it's to I feel that anybody who has a creative life at all, whether it's music, dance, writing, poetry, making art, your work speaks back to you. It tells you what you're thinking and you're feeling, and it's air. It's letting you let it out. So whether or not you have outward support or not, you know who you are, you know what you believe. So this is a painting I did during a very, very difficult time. I had, in rapid succession, I had 2 children. I had a son, and then I had a daughter. This daughter, her name was Lisa. When she was 2 months old, she turned over and laughed. And she never turned over, and she never laughed again. I knew there was something wrong. Okay, there I was, a young woman who had a sense of agency, but I couldn't get people to believe me because it was as if putting on that wedding ring, I had disappeared. I was no longer authentic in my voice. Finally, when this child was 8 months old and not sitting up, I managed to get the pediatrician even to examine her carefully, and it turned out that she had a fatal disease, a genetic disease, a recessive genetic disease, which is why I had 1 healthy child and 1 unhealthy child. And we were told that Lisa was going to die before she was 3 years old. Now, as you can imagine, caring for a child that you know is going to die is very difficult. So this is a painting that I painted not only while Lisa was dying, but I also painted this. This is like true confessions here. I decided that that was not going to be the end of my family life. That was not going to be the legacy I was going to give my son. I had to try again to have a healthy child, so I actually got pregnant. That's a whole saga too. So I'm pregnant, having a dying child. Well, Janet was born the night after she died. That took some courage. Of course, you know, that baby was going to be thrust out, and indeed she was, but we didn't know if she was going to be healthy. And at 10 weeks, we could do a test, a blood test, and it came out borderline. So we had to wait. The pediatrician said, I'm never going to condemn a child from a lab test. We just have to wait and see. November 22nd, 1963, Janet sat up, which meant that she was healthy. I got on the phone to call my husband, and he thought I was calling to tell him that Kennedy had just been assassinated. So I've never had an opportunity to tell this to 200 people before. But, you know, really incredible, this combination of joy and sorrow, joy and sorrow. But there I was with a healthy child, and life should be absolutely wonderful from that point on. The next layer of courage from which this painting came, I call it Annunciation, but it's not the Annunciation you think of. You know, every birth control has some failure, and I actually got pregnant again, believing that I could get a legal abortion. At that time, the only legal abortion you can get in Connecticut was for save the life of the mother. So what I had to do, although I believed, you know, inside, I knew who I was, that I certainly wasn't going to go through that again, those many months, and what it would do to me, because it had already done a lot, you know. I had to tell 3 psychiatrists I was going to kill myself. And I did. I told 3 psychiatrists I was going to kill myself. But you know, a lot of women who needed an abortion at that time couldn't get to see 3 psychiatrists. So this is the painting I did afterwards, and I call it the Annunciation. And it makes me think of those medieval paintings of the Virgin maybe not being so excited. Okay, let's see what we have next. I was humiliated and I was furious. And I can't, here we go. Okay, I was a painter. I suddenly became a sculptor. I suddenly began working a welding torch of 3,000 degrees. I suddenly began cutting and banging and shaping, and I suddenly began frequenting scrap yards, which I have actually done all over the world. Always thrilled to do it. I also did something else. I had a friend who was trying to get a divorce in an equally medieval state of Connecticut, but the whole country was like that. And so we decided we were going to read about women. You know, we felt everything was sort of upside down because we were having so much trouble just existing. And I remember one day in my living room, my husband sitting opposite me reading, I said, "I'm a feminist." But Now had not yet been formed. As soon as Now came into being, I joined. I was the 8th member in the state of Connecticut. The 7 others didn't want to start anything, and I started being a founder and an organizer. But I never thought of it as courage. This was conviction. So whereas I had decided to be pregnant, that was carefully considered. But this one was conviction. That's what gave me the courage, but I never thought of it as courage. I just had to do it. Okay, what's next? I can't remember. Okay. Okay, so there I am. You can see I'm a lot stronger than I was before. And I started making masks. I started making masks because the person I was within didn't show on the outside. I started talking for the women's movement, and people would say, "Oh, she's so pretty. And she's thin, too." Okay. Okay, so just the combination, you know, of making art, knowing who you are. I also am something of a poet, and this poem actually got published in a textbook, no less. And this is the first paragraph, and I'm only reading it because I want you to see the union here. And it's called Changing Masks. Deep inside me, there are others looking for a face to wear. Slowly, they spiral their way past gates and fences carefully placed by early masks, thinking they were there to stay. Well, they weren't. I found new ones. So what happened? It wasn't just making the masks. This is Judith Hannah Weiss. She was a student from Sarah Lawrence. I was her senior thesis. And we put together my first mask tale, Sarah and Hagar from Genesis of the Bible. And this was my first solo performance at Lincoln Center, where I had a show. And it was the first outdoor event. Nobody had an idea to use the outdoors. This is 1972. So there I was a pioneer there. So I put this together. I thought this was the performance. As I stood before my audience, mostly feminists and feminist allies, I had no idea there was a woman there who was involved with a church. And within a month, Judith went to Mexico. She wasn't going to keep working with me. I became a solo performer for the church women of Connecticut, for this group and that group and this group. And after, the other thing I just want to say is that we didn't have the internet, but what we had was clipping services. And my little paper in Ridgefield, Connecticut, was very kind to me because they were waiting for the second wave to happen. So just like when I stood at the Quaker meeting and I said, I think a march has to happen and I'm willing to work for it, they were waiting for somebody like me to stand up and say. So I began to be a performer. I mean, it just wasn't only Connecticut, it was all over the country. And through now also, I achieved a certain amount of notice. Okay, I'm trying to get to the next one. Okay, so in 1975, I managed to be asked to go to Art Park to make art, to make sculpture, but I had to do it in the presence of people. I had no idea that I enjoyed somebody watching over my shoulder as I did my Wellington, but I loved it. So this was my throne to the Sun Queen, and people were supposed to sit on it and tell stories. And a little girl sat on it, and her mother said to her, "Do you feel like a princess?" And she said, "No, I feel like Wonder Woman." So I know I had done a good thing. So I'm doing this, and I thought, this is really nice. I think I'd like to do this around the world. It's just a thought. Those thoughts are just as important as standing up and saying, I'm willing to do a little work. So I got a booking with the United Methodist Women's Quadrennial Conference, and I met Peggy Billings, and she mentored me for a year. And lo and behold, this is India. I went to 11 countries for a year around the world, took my daughter out of school, and it was quite that. Maybe that was courage, but I didn't think of it as courage. It was something I had to do. I wanted to know about the world. I grew up in New York City, and everybody in the world was there. I wanted to know where they lived. So this is Nigeria, which was a dictatorship at the time. And this is 1995. I mean, there were all steps along the way, because once you're out there, you see people notice you. And if they like you, maybe they'll give you a hand, because you can't do it alone. So this is Nepal. I'm working with women who are being trained as ombudsmen to teach their villages not to sell their daughters into what would become prostitution, not a job. And this mask is from the Grave of Martyrs that I made in Bangladesh just like a month before. And this is 2011. And that mask is the memorial mask for Hannah Ekta, a 14-year-old girl who was beaten, raped, and then murdered in a fatwa, because of course, according to that mindset, it was her fault. And the woman who's holding my mask is Mitu Hussain, who was my student in 1995, and now is sculpture professor at Dhaka University, something that cheers my heart a lot, because there weren't any women at the time. Oh, when I left that day, believe me, to go to the Democratic headquarters in Ridgefield, I certainly thought at that stage in my life, what a reward to have Hillary at the helm, and that half the cabinet would be women. And instead we got something else. So that was Tuesday. That Saturday, I gave a workshop at the Art Students League called Printmaking Without a Press, something that I do at the Moran and I do in the Art Students League every year. And I had to do a demo. I was in such shock. I told them I might not even have the right materials because I couldn't think, but I did. So this was the third one that I did. The first one is Shock. I can't remember the name of the second one, but this one was Shift. Shift. I looked at that, And who was this woman who made shift? This was a woman who realized something had happened that was such grave importance that it was going to demand not just one thing. It was going to demand of me, and I have no idea to the level of demand and what it's going to require, but that I had to do it. So that was when the commitment was made inside and spoken back to me. So naturally, when I get down to Florida, I say, who's organizing a march? And a local march. But I got an interview on WMNF, and the guy said to me, why do you want a local march? I said, because we're here. Okay, so Lynn Carroll, that's you. Okay, this was the first, I stood up at the Quaker meeting. You don't tell Quakers you're willing to work for something and expect to sit down. Now, they had organized the biggest march in St. Petersburg that got 1,500 people. Now, I thought we'd certainly get 1,000. Okay, this was the steering committee meeting number 1, and it was held in my humble condominium. So there's Lynn Carroll, there's Lonnie. I don't know if she's here. She told me she was going to try and come. Okay, this is my core committee. They weren't my core committee then, but became my core committee. That's Amy Weintraub. She texted me and said, I want to help. I said, Amy, I'm having this steering committee in 10 minutes. She said, where are you? She was practically around the corner, and she came. Well, that was important because Amy brought Carol Marks, who was our security person, and Ellen Moses. I think Lynn Carroll brought Ellen Moses in there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we had this powerful group of women that the second wave helped create because they had responsible jobs. In the second wave, I have to tell you, a lot of women didn't know how to run a tape machine, honestly, or take a photograph. That's how crimped we were. But the artists had a better sense of self. So this was the first one, and there I am, where your father-in-law saw me giving the welcoming remarks. Okay, so I said, it's my birthday today. January 21st, may you all remember, because it's the Women's March Day. And Mayor Kreisman made it Women's Equality Day in Philadelphia. We're not Philadelphia, we're St. Petersburg. My daughter's in Philadelphia. Okay, so there I am, and I said it's my birthday, and they sang happy birthday to me. So, you know, there's a Papago Native American saying that the reward for heroism is not glory, it's dreams. But for me, it was being sung to by that crowd. So that was a reward. But most amazingly, because this doesn't usually happen, Amy and I actually received last year the Pinellas ACLU Civil Liberties Award. And when I got the email, I have to say, I'm just in my little condominium, I started to cry because we women do so much and we still feel anonymous. So this was a great reward. Okay, now, this is the child who lived. And she just gave a talk. She just gave a talk at the museum on her book. And this is her novel, which I exhort you all to buy, Lily DeYoung. It's obviously feminist, and the central character keeps a diary. So that is how, you know, her courage was strengthened. But my daughter reminded me, she also got courage from love. So I am now going to go and show you how my art feeds my activism, and my activism feeds my art. I didn't have a metal mask down with me, and I'm really not making them anymore. 3,000 degrees. It's a little hard. So here's a little paper mask, and it doesn't seem to matter. The first 3 sentences are from the Grave of Martyrs mass tale that I developed in Bangladesh. I never expected to have to use those words in America. I am from the grave of martyrs. I have given my life so that you can be free. And what have you done with this freedom? Are you afraid now that you know it can be taken, stolen, lost, forgotten? I promise you, you will become braver, for you are not alone. There are millions, millions, millions. We the people, justice for all. Choose your cause. There are many. And you will find powers you didn't know you had. I come to you from the grave of martyrs to give you courage, to dispel despair. I have given my life, and your cause is waiting for you now and forevermore. Tomorrow, I want to see you all there at Pointer Park at 11 o'clock. We need to march. We need to show these young people that we're with them, that we'll do whatever we can to help them. You know, I lost a child. It still causes me grief. Over 600,000 people in America have been killed by guns. Those are families, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, friends. That's millions and millions who've been impacted. So let's act. Thank you. So it was a half hour.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was amazing. After hearing that like 5 times, like this was definitely the best one. You nailed it. So I don't know if there are any Eckerd students in the audience today, but Suzanne is the guest artist in printmaking at Eckerd College, and she's also in the process of writing an illustrated art book memoir entitled Spirit of Hope. So she'll update our community as it gets closer to publication. If you guys would be interested in that, we'll keep you in the loop. We will be marching tomorrow. If you guys, are scared to go by yourself, courage in numbers. So I'm going. Suzanne will be there. If you need a friend, hit me up, and you can come with me. And Jimmy Breen, our former speaker, Jimmy Breen, and chapter friend, he designed these posters. So if you don't have time to make your own poster tonight, you can use his. And there's yellow or orange, because we like to give people choices. We are going to do a little Q&A, but before that, so remember last month when I was like, forevermore, you can always bring donations for trusting the process to our events. Anyone remember me saying that? Just like, there's one thing. Like,
hi, my name is Alexis. I'm representing Trusting the Process this morning because Lexi, who has spoken at Creative Mornings and you guys probably recognize, was working this morning. But we are changing our forevermore and always until next time drop-off location for all of our clothing. I'm sorry, I'm like a little choked up from Suzanne. So like, trying to like say normal things. Anyways, the new drop-off location is Salon True. The address is 3801 Park Street North, Suite 2, St. Petersburg. If you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, the address is there. And yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Trusting the Process is a local charity founded here. It administers to low-income and homeless living in shelters, typically temporary shelters. We provide makeovers, hair, makeup, and new wardrobe to those so that they can remember that they are loved and they are human and they're just going through a rough time. Also, that'll choke me up. So, thank you so much. Again, that's Salon True. Thanks.
cool, thank you. So thank you to the people who did bring donations today, and then next month, just don't do that anymore. Just go to Salon True instead. Okay, so who has a question for Suzanne? She laid out like 82 years in like 25 minutes, so I feel like there's some avenues that we could explore further. Oh, come on, have courage. Hey, yes, okay, I'm gonna run back there. Here we go. Okay. Yes.
So, hi, my name is Rita.
Hello, Rita.
You are an incredibly inspiring person, and I just want to let you know that. How do you feel about the future of feminism as it's happening right now in terms of intersectionality and all those different movements? What is your perspective on it?
Well, of course, we had the first wave. My father's sister was a first waver. And we had the second wave, and then we had the third wave. The third wave didn't like the second wave. They didn't. Kate Millett was looking for a job at a university, and they told her she was passé. Well, you may not know who Kate Millett was, but you need to look her up. A lot of people don't even know that Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique. You know, you're going to look at that too, because that was very helpful to me. You know, I had a chance to meet a lot of fourth wavers. I am now a fourth waver. I had a chance to meet many fourth wavers. And I feel, you know, people said, you know, women seem to be going backwards. And I said, just you wait. I mean, first of all, Me Too, you know, this has been going on a long time. But, you know, now we're speaking out. Time's up. We're speaking out. I think America is going to prove to the world that we know how to save our democracy, and it's because of the women. There's a saying, you know, never underestimate the power of a woman. Never underestimate the power of a woman and her children, because that's what we have now.
I'm just going to step you away from your speaker.
Oh, okay. Is there another question? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paul. Thanks for the great talk. I was curious about a recipe, perhaps, for sustaining these types of movements, not only just activating them.
Well, I'll tell you, when I came back to Connecticut over the summer, there was a reunion of Connecticut feminists, Veteran Feminists of America. And these were all, you know, people close to my age, some who are really, really famous. And many of us had a chance to speak. And I gotta tell you, those women are still at it. I think that when it's such a deep commitment. I mean, when you hear these young high school kids talk, they know they're in it for the rest of their lives. I think when you make that move, that woman who looked at the shift print, I still don't know what's going to be asked of me, because we still don't know what kind of danger we're going to be in, or we are in. So and you know, when I feel the energy of your energy, I just know you're not going to let this pass. So I feel hopeful, really hopeful. Listen, I couldn't have gotten pregnant if I didn't feel hope.
One more?
I wanted to thank you for organizing the St. Pete Women's March. I was there that day with my husband and friends, and it was a really incredible experience, so thank you. My question is, I happen to be 8.5 months pregnant now, and what are your thoughts on raising a feminist son?
You better.
And we're done.
And I think it's easier now. It will be easier now. Because you're not, I mean, when I started organizing for the second wave, someone told me that on TV last night, one of the Parkland fathers, whose child had died, said that he was fearless. And I would say that, after my personal ordeal, I became fearless. I mean, I could go out in front of I just didn't even care. Believe me, I was attacked. I just didn't care. But I used to wake up in the morning, first thought, Joan of Arc, what are they gonna do to me? I didn't know. And I got, during the march, I got one hate mail. After I told people that I was 82 years old. 81 last year, younger. I got this letter with, of course, no return address, and it said, you're 81 years old. Have you thought that you're going to hell? So, but that was nothing, really. It was I saved it. It's an artifact, but it'll be a lot easier. First of all, there's so much more support out there now. Before it was a lot harder.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to stop, but you can feel free to rush Suzanne and ask her all the questions that are really in your heart after this.
Thank you for the privilege of sharing with me.
Thank you so much.